Hey y'all, happy Sunday. Hope everything is going well for you and yours. This is the portion of the show where we let YouTube send out the notifications via social media, let folks know that the broadcast is getting ready to start. We'll sit here and we'll count down the next 2 minutes before I push that button and go live. If you happen to be watching this on replay, go ahead and scrub past this graphic until you see my smiling face. If you have any questions and you're joining us today in the live chat, feel free to go ahead and add those questions to the live chat now, and we'll get to them in due course during this live Q&A session. So, sit back, relax, grab a beverage, and we'll get going in about 30 seconds. Hey, good afternoon. Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well today. Welcome to live Q&A number 120. Holy cow. Hard for me to believe that we've been going this long. So, before we get into today's episode, got to do a little bit of housework behind the scenes here. And that is, let's see, today is December 5th. I'm going to be going in this coming Friday the 10th to have some serious dental work done. So there will not be a live Q&A next week. That's December 12th. And the jury's going to be out about December 19th. I don't know. I physically will not be able to speak. And nobody appreciates that more than my wife. But be that as it may, so there will not be a live Q&A next week. We'll see what happens on Sunday the 19th. But I should be back up to snuff and ready to go the week after that. So let's see. Also, I'd like to remind you that Michael Mazalik's channel is on hiatus until the new year. He is making videos, making things, and getting stuff ready to go. But there's a little bit of time involved in all that, so he's decided to put his channel on hiatus. So there will not be a premiere this afternoon, as you probably have already deduced. So with all the housekeeping out of the way, I'd like to introduce a man that I met through our mutual friend Dave Gatton, through the Facebook groups, the Gatton CNC groups. And speak of the devil, there's the man himself, my CNC Obi-Wan. Well, I'd like to introduce Rob Shuster. Now, Rob and as I said, we met through Dave Gatton and through the Facebook groups. And Rob immediately took off above and beyond everybody else with some of the stuff he makes, some of the machines he's made, some of the the jigs, the fixtures, the projects, everything. You can see some of them behind him. So welcome to the show, Rob, and thanks for being my first guest ever.
Thank you. I'm very honored. You're more famous than you really realize. There's a lot of people who love your videos.
Well, thank you for that, but I'm just some guy in a shed, so it's hard to think in those terms. I don't believe any of it. But
that's good. I think we both built the shoestring Gatton design back, I'm thinking 7-8 years ago now.
It's getting to be about that far back. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's 15, 16, something in that, probably 2015. It's been a while.
I could figure it out if I had to, because my first project was my daughter's graduation from college. But yeah. I can't tell you the exact year she graduated off the top of my head, but I could figure it out. But yeah. And then you, of course, upgraded to the Gatton CNC, and I, being the pretend inventor, I had to modify my old one, which it still has the same bed and the same rails on the side, but other than that, it's my own monstrosity now. But I love tinkering. Obviously, I'm one to be inventor, pretend inventor.
Well, you've come up with some very, very cool stuff. And I've been telling folks about the machine that you built. Okay, let's get into a little bit of a musical background first. I know you play guitar and you play drums, correct?
I don't play guitar. My son does. My son-in-law does. But so I do want to, quote, build a guitar someday, but it's not for me. It's for family members.
Okay.
But yeah, I've been a drummer since grade school. Started a little grade school band and went up through high school. I thought I was pretty good. I was the drummer in the jazz band in high school and college. I marched in drum bugle corps. Yeah, I was real active. Started college actually as a music major, but then I realized that's not the life for me. So I changed to a business background, and now I'm a computer IT guy. So the business degree didn't do me much good either.
Well, we all follow a path, and sometimes that path forks off into something else. You never know. So, I mean, but that's what keeps life interesting. So when did you first start thinking about getting into drum building and making the instruments and not just playing them?
Well, like everyone, you watch your videos on stuff, and there's some good drum building videos out there, and people would get the drum and they would get a router table and they get a spinner and they'd spin it on top of the router table, and the bit was pointing up, they'd spin around, and that's how they'd round the drum, and then run routers through the inside and a little jig and stuff. And I kind of wanted to build a drum just because, well, I'm a drummer and a woodworker. And then I kind of kept thinking we could automate this a little bit more and a little bit more. And finally I had the crazy idea of building a full-size rotary CNC to make drums. And I thought about it a long time, probably a year for the first little drawing in my mind and paper to actually cutting it out. And in fact, you transitioned real well. I think I've got the, I designed it in V-carve originally. If you want to, I can share my screen. I can show the original.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Share screen.
This is scintillating entertainment. I mean, I love StreamYard. I use StreamYard for my live broadcast, but they haven't made this screen sharing easy. Okay, here we go. All right, there we are.
And of course, I'm using my scroll pad, not the mouse, so this can be a little odd. Just, no. But that's V-carve.
Okay.
Excuse me. And I drew in the scale that I could, and there's, I don't know how many layers I've got here. This, it keeps going and going and going and going.
Oh boy. Yeah.
That's my how I did it. I don't have a 3D CAD program. I use V-carve the whole way. Over here, you can see the kind of the side panel, how it fits. And obviously this is the gantry, and that goes, that's the,
and that is the machine itself.
That is, that's the visual drawings. I kept, going down, and I just figured how big I could go. I kept, scaling like the circles, the drums, so we can go up to, I think I could do a 24-inch bass drum if I tried, but I have not tried yet.
Okay.
But I go that big. And,
okay. So have you,
that's the side there I was doing to figure out how big I could go. And,
okay. So have you pushed the limits of it? Do you know the smallest you can make and the largest you can make yet?
I can, okay. Hard to explain this. I'm going to switch back from sharing. Stop sharing.
Okay.
I'll try to go back to, I'll move the camera and see if that works too.
See, for those out in the chat, what I'm doing is I'm teasing it. He's going to show the actual machine itself.
Yeah.
We got to build up to it,
Okay. My cords are all tangled here. Here is the machine. Obviously.
Earthquake. Okay.
Can I back up far enough? I can't back up far enough to get.
Oh,
I'm way back too.
Okay. So that lower assembly there with the all thread on it and that wooden disc,
Right. So you
the
can see, I don't know, can you see there's a piece right here and stuff? That
yeah,
part actually will go up and down.
okay,
This whole carriage, it'll go up and down.
okay,
I've got a threaded rod on each side. You can see that right there. So I got one on each side. Got 4 bolts here. I'll loosen the 4 bolts
right,
on each side, and then I'll just get a socket wrench or socket driver on its drill, and
right.
it'll raise the whole thing up as high as I want to go. So I can get really small. I don't know, it's small.
Okay, and that's on and that is for machining the outside of
Well,
the
yeah, but I've done little things too, more than just drums. Like
okay.
I'll show later on the show and tell here. I'll show a wine bottle I did. Actually, it looks like a wine bottle.
Oh, nice.
I'm pretty proud of it. It was my daughter's wedding, so
Okay.
we always personalize different things, and I personalized a wine bottle. It was wood wine bottle. Came out really nice.
Okay. Okay, so I noticed that big, I hesitate to call it a cog, but that's about all you can
It's a
call
grinding
it.
pulley, yeah.
And
When I first built the machine, I was trying to find a metal pulley that would work right, timing pulley.
right.
And I had a smaller belt. I had an XL time belt, which is pretty thin. They're 3/8, maybe 1/4 inch wide. The same thing that I have the rest of the drum in the video when you saw the belt go around. That was the size I had before, and it's just a lot of slop in there. It wasn't quite tight enough, and I wanted a wider belt. But again, to find a timing pulley that's big, it can add up fast, and it has to be fit on a half-inch threaded rod. And finally, a guy said, "Well, you got a CNC, cut your own." And the bell went off. Oh, do that. So now there's that time pulley I cut on my other machine, and the belt that we turn the inside of the drum, that belt that goes around, that's also a pulley that I cut on my machine, and made a world difference. Now I've got like a 12-to-1 ratio from the stepper motor turning to that running. Before it was like 6-to-1, and so I got a lot more control, a wider belt, much more precision now. I was really having problems getting perfect. I mean, rounding a drum is easy, but if you want to do a 3D shape like my other drums, that gets tough. You just can't have any slop doing that. So that made a world of difference, going to a wider belt and a bigger pulley.
Okay. And that was basically to give you more control of the resolution.
Yeah.
So that you can do 3D carvings on the outside of a shell.
Right. And I've done quite a few of those now. I've got some pictures. I got some drums over here in a second I'll pull out. But
okay.
Yeah, 3D carvings the outside.
And that's something that I've not seen, and that's something that I don't know.
I don't want to say I'm the only person in the world doing it. I know there was a guy a while back who he's passed away, but 10 years ago, I think it was called Fatty Drums with a PH, Fatty Drums. And if you Google that, you'll probably see some 3D. He even had a dragon, which I've done a couple of dragons.
Right.
Never met him. I didn't even know he was, after I cut my first 3D drum and somebody said, "Oh, is that like Fatty's?" And I had to go Google this because, like I said, he's been gone for a while. But yeah, and there's another guy, a big drum builder, but who does drums with a CNC, but he doesn't do it rotary like I do. He puts them flat on a XYZ machine and just, he's got a long spindle and a long bit, and he just goes around.
Okay.
So he's not doing 3D shapes on the outside like I am, but he does some really nice stuff too. And that's his full-time job, and he makes hundreds and hundreds of drums and sells them to manufacturers for stuff. So.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, it struck me that, this is just me talking here, and I've never done it. A dedicated rotary axis machine is excellent, and carving on the outside of a drum, that's excellent as well. And then you get into 3D carving on the outside, and then you're also doing epoxy inlays and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But then you made the drum capable of carving the inside of that shell.
Yeah, and that was from day one. That was my plan. But again, it works. But it's awkward doing it. But I don't know a better way to do it yet. So maybe, if money was unlimited, it
Oh,
would
sure.
be a heavy metal machine and it'll be open on one side instead of
Yeah.
having but now we're talking serious welding skills and serious money and
Well, yeah. If money was unlimited, we would all be Steve Jobs. I wanted to do this, make it happen, and you'd have a team behind you. So,
it's definitely is a hobby. It's not my day job. My goal is to make enough money to support the
Mhm.
hobby and
Right.
not keep asking the wife for money for more woodworking tools. So
Yeah, and there's a lot of us in that exact same boat. I mean, it's just
that's what we were kind of talking about the other day, and you got me thinking about that because you said you don't sell your stuff, and I got to thinking I don't really sell my stuff either. I post pictures on the Drum Maker website, Facebook page, just like in the woodworking, and the ones I've sold, people have searched me out instead
right.
of me trying to go out and sell them, and I selling is just not fun. I don't like it.
Yeah,
So,
I've been on both sides of the retail marketing thing, and I used to sell real estate, so I know exactly what you mean. And I'm kind of in the similar situation. I'll post a picture of something I've made, and folks will say, "Hey, how much for me to make one of those? How much to make me one of those?" And if I don't want to do it, I'll give them an I don't want to do it price. But if I'm going to
yeah.
be making 2 or 3 more, I'll add one to the list and just go for it. But yeah, I'm not out to try to. I'm retired. I don't want a job. So that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. We do have a couple of questions here. I'll get to
Cool.
this one first. It kept jumping. All right. Brooks Martin wants to know, does adding 3D models or epoxy inlays change the sound of the drum?
Not saying no 100%. I can't say that, but very little, very little. It's how many, unless you're going super thin, which that would be change the sound anyway. Not really. And epoxy, I've never done a side by side, but I've seen other people doing some epoxy stuff. And that's the thing. When I'm making, 6-10 drums a year, it's really hard for me to say this changes this, and you can't have. I don't have two identical side by side, one with epoxy, one with not. But
Mhm.
I don't think it changes hardly at all. Not
Right.
substantial at all.
Okay. So it's not choking the drum or muting it or making it
No.
dead or anything like that.
If I put, a large amount of epoxy, like I did one where actually I cut a deep pocket, filled it all with epoxy. Then for the inside, I cut away all the wood. So it was all epoxy. Well, some design suspended in epoxy. And that one probably would have had a different sound. But a guy tested, a local guy who's a real drummer and goes to the studio and stuff. He actually tested it and he said it sounded good. But the bad thing was because of the difference of expansion of wood and the epoxy, I got some cracks in it relatively fast. So
Okay.
cool drum, it got thrown away. In fact, I gave it to the guy that tested it. He thought it was cool. And it's still, to me, with cracks, I couldn't sell it. So
Yeah. Okay. That was going to be my next question. Have you ever run into any issues with the different materials being, epoxy or even glued up staves because things expand and contract at different rates?
I've never had a problem with a joint at a stave or anything like that. I did have one drum where it was lace wood, which I don't have a lot of experience with. It's kind of rare, but it was really cool. And it did get a crack, but not at a glued joint. It was just a crack.
Oh,
And
in the wood.
And it went from dry Arizona here to Florida, and the humidity, I think, got it. And it sat without the drum head on it, which, the drum head pulls all together. That makes it a lot stronger in the end.
Mhm.
So that's the one failure I've had and he glued it up. I was willing, he bought it. So I was willing to, what's it going to take to make you happy? And he glued it up and he's happy again. So I didn't have to do anything there, but it was real pretty dry. That might have been a video I did on an epoxy, lace wood one, but I'm not sure.
I don't know. I went back through your videos before we did this, just so I had it fresh and sort of fresh in my mind. And it doesn't stand out, but maybe I need to go back and look.
Right. It was a dragon design on epoxy drum.
Okay.
I've done a couple dragons, which I got somewhere over here I can show you in a second.
Okay.
Well, I think since we're talking epoxy, I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah. Please, by all means. And by the way, while Rob is grabbing that shell or that drum rather, oh wow, Holy
Does that design
cow.
look familiar to anybody?
Let me get, nope, I got the wrong one here. Let me try to make you the star of the show here. Come on. No, not me. Rob. Not me. Ah. Oh, come on. See, Dave, I'm learning, but I'm not learning well enough. Well, there's a way. Picture-in-picture layout. No, that's not the one. I want to make. Well, crumb. Sorry, Rob.
Oh, well.
I'll learn it. Oh, now
Familiar? That should look familiar.
it looks very familiar. And I was just going to ask you, is that the design from the ubiquitous Paradise box?
Yes, it is. I edited it quite a bit, note editing and stuff, but
Sure.
that is, let me turn the snares off. I'm going to get some rattle here. But yeah, that is. And then I carved the design and filled it with a blue tinted epoxy.
That's
so
gorgeous.
That's smooth. I mean,
yeah.
And
that is gorgeous.
It's even a little bit translucent. You can see through it a little bit. And
now, what is the shell material? Is
that's hard maple?
Hard maple. Okay.
Rock maple sounds better, I guess, but hard maple. I don't know all the different terms for the same wood.
Well, they're basically interchangeable. You basically have hard maple and soft maple, and everything else is just a superlative. So that is glorious. I mean, wow. And all of that was carved on that dedicated rotary axis on that
100%,
machine.
Yeah, and that one was V-carve instead of a 3D carve. Here's another one that I've done.
And then there's the 3D carved sugar skulls. That's gorgeous.
That one was a pain because since I only have V-carve, I had to make, Michael could probably explain to do this better than I did, but if you look carefully, you might see a little seam there. I actually did the drum design and I put one skull 8 times around, then I copied it 8 times and then removed one skull, put another one in, and then I'd V-carve this or 3D carve this section, then put the next one and carve this section. So it's actually multiple carves to get one.
Yeah.
Because you can only do one 3D shape in V-carve. So a lot of work went into that one of software side, but
well, you know, that's testament that you can make it work. It just may take a bit of doing in the software to get it done, but because you're right, you can only import one STL file into V-carve at a time. But wow, that's awesome.
And then first of all, here's a dragon drum, and I even bought a special drum head that's a dragon drum head.
Perfect. And then there's the 3D dragons around the side. That is gorgeous.
The same design. Well, it's 2 on each side. So 2 on this side, and then get my arm out of here.
Wow. That's glorious.
Black hardware on it.
Yeah. That really makes it pop.
Yeah. And then the puzzle drum's the other one I have out here, which you've already seen that one, but I'll grab it anyway, just in case.
Oh, the puzzle shell, and there is I hesitate to say the star of the show, but I mean, look at that. Look at the finish on that.
Actually, I'm not 100% satisfied with the finish. There's some brush marks in there that I'm probably going to sand it and try to get it smoother. I don't know if you can see.
We're always going to be our own harshest critics, but I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah. And this one's kind of unique because the grain goes this way. Usually it's up and down on my stuff, but it goes this way. And I can tell it's substantially stronger.
Okay.
In fact, when this is earlier on, I put it, down, and I stood on it and it didn't even flex. Whereas the other drums I do when the pattern or the grain goes that way, I wouldn't do that. So
wow, that is so good. Well, I'm glad it survived at least until you could, show it on the broadcast. Wow. And how thick did that end up being?
Little less than a ½ inch. It was like 0.487, I think, when I measured it. So that's actually, I'm going to grab this drum again. One thing I'll show you. One of the problems when you put the staves in there, of course, each piece is
Right.
flat.
Mm-hmm.
So as you get to the inside, like here's an example right here. I don't know if you can see this, where my thumb is.
The other direction. There you go.
There we go. There's actually a little pocket there, which I filled with clear epoxy.
Okay.
I'll show a picture in a second that makes more sense. But
Okay.
because the further away you get from the center of the piece,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to get, you're dropping away from the center of the drum. So I had pockets at the long parts of that. So
Okay.
I fill that with clear epoxy, and it's nice and smooth still. So
Right.
but another thing you don't think about when you're in a drum that
Yeah. And now, did with that being glued up in as many pieces as it took to make it, did that choke the sound or mute the sound or anything?
no. Well, I can't swear to that because
Right.
I haven't played it yet. But no, I don't think so.
Okay.
There's lots of drum people say why their version of a drum is best.
Right.
The mass market ones are ply drums. They're usually between 3 and, gosh, I've seen 20 plies for drums. And they're very, very strong because you're going multiple, like plywood. It's very strong, different directions, plies do well. There's a lot of glue in that, getting all those plies together. So some purists say that's bad.
Right.
So, and that's a legitimate concern. Again, I've never done a side-by-side test.
Right.
I'm kind of the thing, I believe you tune a drum right, you can get a good sound out of any decent drum.
Right.
But if
Right.
you want a metal drum, there's definitely a difference between metal drum and a wood drum. But a lot of people, like the stave drums, like I do. I mean, the staves usually look like that, or just a little bit angle.
Right.
We all wrap around the circle. That has less glue than most drums.
Right.
Some people do the segmented drum, like Dave's video he just did the other day. He had the segments for a training project. That's a real popular one. Has more glue, but still less than a ply drum. Segmented drums are very popular. They're very pretty. But between segments, and then some people use steam bent. They actually bend the piece of wood all the way around and glue it up. It's under a lot of tension, but wow, that's the least amount of glue, and it's probably the strongest one out there, I would guess. Well, maybe ply is stronger. I don't know, but some people love the steam bent single ply, they call it, I guess. But yeah. So in different ways, every group says why mine's best. Why my Ford's better than your Chevy? Why whatever. Everyone has their own opinion. Since I know how to make stave drum, this is what I make. I'll say that's the best, but I don't really.
Yeah.
I can't prove that, but that's what I do. That's what I do.
Yeah, no empirical data to back that up. But and I may be naive here because I'm not a musician. I'm a wannabe drummer. But my attitude is if you need specialist equipment and set everything up and record and take measurements and what have you, if you need that to be able to tell the difference, then there is no difference.
Yeah. And same discussion like on guitars. I mean, my son's a guitar player, and he's an electrical engineer. He's a smart guy, and he does sound booth for a group. He knows what he's talking about. And he was always chasing that sound. He was in junior high and high school trying to get whatever. And like Eddie Van Halen, the Frankenstrat that he became famous with, he wired himself. He actually wired it wrong. He didn't realize for a long time that one of the pickups wasn't even working. It was a cheap old Strat that he painted up with spray paint, and it's the sound he's famous for. I think we chase at that nth degree sometime when no one notices. But
exactly, that's what I was getting ready to say. If you can't tell the difference through the ear and you need specialist equipment, then to me there is no difference.
And obviously, my drums, I'm making them very artistic and pretty, which that's cool, and I hope somebody likes that. But when it comes down to it, that's not going to affect the sound. Well, I want to say at all. It might be negative in some cases, but minimally negative. But yeah, people who buy my drums are probably buying them because they're pretty, not because they sound a certain sound.
Yeah. And this, let's be honest. This is not something you're going to take to a gig at a beer bar.
I hope not. I would. That's when I posted pictures before. There've been discussions. I'd showed all my friends, and somebody said, "No, you wouldn't. It would be."
Yeah. That's excellent point. Let's see here. We did have a couple of questions. Let me get back. And Buck Naked. Excellent name. Do you use the machine to drill your mounting holes for the lugs?
Yes, I do. And yeah, this I didn't show this one. Of course, I haven't drilled this one yet because I'm not sure what lugs will go on this drum. But yes, and some people spend hours and hours doing that by hand, getting it just right. And of course, a regular drill bit wants to pull the wood out and chip it, whereas an end mill, it pushes through and makes a clean cut. That's one of the big advantages. I can drill all the lug holes in 5 minutes, and it's machine perfect. Whereas people can spend hours and hours. They buy a pattern, they lay the drum on, and get your square out, and you measuring, and that's. Of course, I spent I don't know how many man hours I have built in that machine, so I've got to do a lot of drums to justify that. But yes, it does a good job drilling the lug holes.
Yeah. Okay. And let's see, Brooks Martin had a question on the skull shell. Is that a metallic paint finish?
No, that is General Finishes gel stain. And I'll be right back. I'll grab it again.
Okay. And for everybody, there is a link to Rob's channel down in the description of this video.
But it's just, that's the same stain here and here. This is just super thick, a lot of layers. I put it here, and then I lightly sand it or scuffed with like a 3M pad. So in the pockets, you get more definition. I'm trying to find a trick to get 3D to pop. So you can see if it's darker, the deeper it is. And that was the intent there, was I kept adding gel stain, and suddenly I realized I've got to add darker here because it was getting globbed up, but it came out nice in the end. But yeah, I was trying to get in the pockets, then sand away or just scuff away what's left on top. So it's lighter on top, darker inside. And that came out really nice for showing the depth of the 3D cut.
Yeah, that's kind of an antiquing process, just removing the stain from the higher areas and let it soak and seep into those darker areas, and it just really makes those raised areas pop. It's excellent. Let's see, Dave Gatton says, any plans to make a bass drum and a complete drum kit?
Not at this. I mean, yes, someday, yes, but in the near future, no. I don't have time. And snare drums where the money is at, honestly. If you want to make a snare, you can justify, well, some people spend $1,000 for a snare where you'd never pay that for a bass, even though a bass is bigger, more work.
Yeah.
So that's where the top end is. But yeah, someday I probably will someday, but it might be when I retired and have more time.
Well, and a bigger music room. Folks don't realize how much real estate a drum kit takes.
My son, of course, my daughter and son-in-law, they have a house and no kids. Mm-hmm. And he's a strong music background. He plays bass, he plays guitar, he plays drums. Mm-hmm. And so he has a beautiful drum set, 26-inch bass, which is rare. It's kind of a John Bonham type thing from back in the day, a giant bass drum. He has their music room, or I don't know what room you call it. He's got guitars hanging around the walls and stuff. It's just, it's wonderful. But they'll learn to have kids someday.
Yeah.
But for now, that's a great music room he's got. Amps in the corners. That's a music room.
Well, when I got into drumming, the guy at the music store was teasing. Everybody wants to pick on drummers for some reason. Don't ask me why, but we all do it. It's okay, because drummers tell bass player jokes and piano player jokes and everything else. But so it's all fine. But he told me, when I bought my kit, I bought a Yamaha YB kit, and he said, "You know what? You're violating the first rule of drumming." And I said, "What's that?" He says, "Never buy more drums than you can take to the pawn shop in one trip." And so it kind of just, drum kits take up a lot of space. Yeah. So
I'm in my garage right now. There's my drum set is over there on the shelves. It hasn't been put together in a long time.
Yeah.
I still have my same one I got in high school, and I love it. I'll keep it forever, but it might not ever get set up again. But it's for sentimental value that's not going away. I will not get rid of that set. That every year for Christmas, I got a few more parts for that drum over 4 or 5 years. That's it.
Well, it's a labor of love. You have to. You have to. Yeah. So, okay. We had a couple of questions up here on the puzzle drum, which is the one that I've been promoting like crazy. And
I see another question right there that from NWG Licto. Yes, I was in Troopers, 1980 through 82. So that was my drum corps.
Wow. Okay.
You don't know that, but you see the cross sabers up there and says Troopers. That's the logo. Their 11th Cav was kind of their designed after their Casper Collins was the 11th Ohio Cav, and that was their logo. So that was my drum corps for 3 years.
So
I grew up in Wyoming, so that was local.
I take it you spotted that sign in the background, and that's what made you ask.
Somebody knows drum corps. Yep. That's
yep.
Right.
He said he was in the Argonauts.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent, but
that's old school. That's old school. It's I see. I mixed up Argonauts and Argonne Rebels. They're two different ones. That Argonne Rebels were Kansas. Argonauts, I'm trying to think. They were east somewhere, but I can't tell where they're from. But yeah, that's old school.
Okay. Oh, that's
right. Okay, yeah.
That's okay. I didn't recognize this name. That's one of my buddies, Darren. He's up in Salem, about 2.5 hours north of me. So, okay. All right. Dave has another question. Then I want to really get on that puzzle drum. What's the largest drum you can make with your current setup?
I think a 24-inch base is as big as I could go, though I have not tried, but I think I can do that. From my original plans, when I planned it out, my little drawings, it should fit, but realistically 22 is probably the safest, but I might be able to squeeze 24 out of it.
Okay. And what about length of the shell, the depth of a shell?
Bigger than any drum I've ever seen, unless you're able to do a conga or something like that. But
well, that's where I was going to go.
Yeah, I get a tape measure out, but I'm betting 30, 36 inches. I could go. I mean, a lot more than I could do a lot of 3D turning stuff. It's not a drum. I could get a decent sized table base or something like that in there. So.
Okay. Well, now on that puzzle drum, again, folks, there is a link to the puzzle drum video in the description of this video and a link to Rob's channel in the description of this video. You don't post content regularly.
No, I just don't have time.
But the videos he has over there are absolutely awesome. You want to know more about the machine because, again, his CNC will cut the outside, then he can change it up and cut the inside of that shell all the way across. And there's links to both down in the description of this video. But where did the idea for the puzzle shell come from?
I don't know. I mean, I've seen some nice puzzle projects recently, and it kind of got me thinking, could you wrap that on a drum? And then I had different iterations in my head. How could you do this? And I finally thought, well, if I put a jig on there, had the right angle, I could cut. And again, a lot of little tests to see, can it work? And I don't know. If I really wanted to be a real drum builder, I would not spend all the time just messing around with these little oddball things. And half of them you never hear about because they failed. I mean,
right. Well, and that's legit because I don't know how many iterations that went through before you got that successful shell.
That's the first shell I tried, but I mean, I showed in the video that I showed a shot of a lot of the test ones. Mm-hmm. That's maybe a quarter of all the test pieces I did. I did so many test pieces, and most of them just got thrown out. And there were so many tests but I think just a standard gap of a 200ths or so many thousandths around that would be right. But because there's a little flex and stuff, has to be tighter or looser. I happen to have a little example, like on this part, the very base, it'd be a little tighter there and looser, or the other around, tighter here and looser at the base. And just, I did so many tests trying to get it to work right, but yeah, I got a little.
And then coming up with that mounting to mount it on a wedge to be able to machine that angle into it was, I mean, a simple stroke of genius. I mean,
I came up with my own mind, but later I saw some other things. People did some similar things later after I had that idea. But so I'm not the only person who had that idea, but that wasn't a copy. That was
well. But we all see things like that. It's just the ability to remember and apply it to that. Go, oh yeah, aha! I saw that once before. Now, how difficult was it to figure out the angle that you needed?
That's actually pretty easy. I build stave drums, which are, well, staves are the same thing except flat edges.
Mm-hmm.
But so same angles.
Okay.
If you Google out there, if you Google stave drum calculator,
Mm-hmm.
there's a nice calculator that shows the exact sizes. It'll tell you to make, like, it'll say this size, make this exactly 2.4 inches if you want a 14-inch drum, or
Okay.
it tells you the measurements, everything. It's a time saver. So that part wasn't hard, and you could do the math. I mean, you get 360 divided by, this has 16 pieces. There'll be 8 lugs. You always want the lug to match in the middle of something. So if I want a 16 lug drum, it's got to be, or 8 lug drum, it's got to be 16 or 24 or 32. It's got to be something divisible by 8.
Okay.
And you divide by 360 by 16, and you get 22 and a half. And then you have the angle, it takes 2 of this angle to add up to that angle. So so that's half of it, and you put another one next to it, and that adds up to be 22 and a half. So 11 and a quarter is the number.
Okay.
You think it's not tough once you do the math, once you've
Right.
seen it a few times, but the first person picking it up was, yeah.
And there are calculators out there for everything. So, and I can think of several different uses just right off the top of my head for that drum stave calculator that have nothing to do with drums. But when you're trying to figure angles for pieces for making a curved, or just even a segmented turning, if you were going to go.
I'm back to Dave Gatton doing his turning segment the last one. He had those segmented pieces and his wedgie sled, and same math doing his vase that he did. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So the glue up, how difficult was the glue up on getting those pieces together?
Well, if you watch the video, it was much tighter than I expected.
Yeah.
And I'll show a picture in a bit, but I loaded up with glue, because once you squeeze it together, you're squeezing these. Once you squeeze it together, it squeezes all the glue out.
Yeah.
So I put a lot more extra glue than I would normally. And if I show you shots, or you can probably see them in the video. Yeah. That's the shell before I started smoothing it. There's glue everywhere. It's pretty ugly, but inside there was beautiful. But yeah, there was a lot of glue globs and stuff on the outside there.
Now, I know some people are probably like, well, show some pictures, and we will in a second. Yeah. But Rob made a video on this entire build and this entire thing, and you really have to see that video for yourself to appreciate the whole thing. He did go through the process in detail, if I can speak. And so any photos that we show here won't do the video justice and won't do the drum justice, but do check it out. Like I said, there's a link in the description. So if you have any pictures of the process or any pictures of the build that you would like to do or like to show, feel free. I mean,
let me see.
Just whenever you would like to do that.
I didn't do that many. I got pictures of stuff, but not of the build process.
Well, I mean, anything you would like to share. And Darren kind of brings up an interesting point. Interesting how many of us CNC users are drummers. Well, maybe it's that analytical math-based mind. I don't know. So, I mean, some folks don't realize what it takes to play drums. It's not just patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time. It's doing the same thing with both feet at the same time, because you're playing one rhythm with your left hand, one rhythm with your right hand, one rhythm with your left foot, and another rhythm with your right foot, and keeping all those things going at the same time.
I always associate a lot of math with it. I'm not sure if that's a legit skill, but I always think like a trumpet player, they know the basic rhythms, but drummers have 4 things going in. I always thought it was math skills that kind of tied it together, but I could be wrong. But that's what I always felt, is the math really was more of it than other music.
Well, even if it's just something basic, because I mean, if it's a 4/4 tune, you're still going in with half notes and quarter notes and eighth notes all at the same time. And you've got to remember that your bass drum foot is doing, you know, whole notes, and then your hi-hat, and then your snare. And it just, that's why when you watch guys like Neil Peart play a drum solo, you're just blown away at how this guy can keep track of so many rhythms at the same time, as well as the location of all of the drums and cymbals themselves.
There's a lot of muscle memory in there, just doing it over and over again, because you couldn't actually keep that all straight if you really
were thinking about it.
Yeah, you just couldn't keep it all straight.
Okay. Well, here it's kind of a little bit of a change of subject, but Ayal Peleg over in Israel is asking, I would love to know what Rob is using for software and electronics for his machine.
Okay. I use LinuxCNC. I'm a big LinuxCNC fan. I know that's kind of the minority out there, but I first did it because my first CNC I built, I was poor. I shouldn't say poor. I had 2 kids in college. I was cash poor.
You were poor.
I was cash poor. And I really wanted to build a CNC machine. So it was free, and I had some old PCs around that had a parallel port. So it was free. I started out with the Xylotex box, like all the Gatton people did. Mm-hmm. And I still have those electronics on my regular CNC, though I had a few connections actually come loose in there over time. So it's not inside that box anymore. I mounted it, but it's the same electronics still. And then on this machine, whoa, got a cord here. I got all the parts from Stepper Online, and I followed the diagram from one of the Gatton people. I think it was one of the people who had all their wiring set up. They did a diagram for us. Dave can chime in. Who was it?
I think, was it Michael Chipser who did that drawing, or was it Jerry Brown?
It was Chipser. It was Chipser, yeah.
Okay.
I followed his program, though it was for 4 motors. The Rotary has 3 motors instead of 4, right. But same difference. And parallel port to the PC with LinuxCNC. And then vCarve Pro, I upgraded to 11. I had 9.5 before I finally upgraded to 11 a few months ago. I bought a new PC, so I upgraded everything. I upgraded vCarve at that point. I upgraded my video production stuff. We talked about that offline a while back. I went to DaVinci, and same screen capture you recommended. So I've upgraded all my old video making stuff to that.
Yeah.
But
now, so you're a Linux CNC devotee. I've never experienced LinuxCNC. I don't know if there's any difference between, because I run Mach 3 on a PC, on an old PC running Windows XP, as a matter of fact.
My thoughts are, if you want to have a basic machine with, the basics, LinuxCNC you can have going almost as easy as Mach 3. It's very similar. Yes, you have to install Linux, but you download from the Linux CNC.org the full install file, and I don't mean just LinuxCNC. It's a Linux install file. So you get a computer just like installing Windows. It wipes everything. You install Linux and LinuxCNC in the same step. It does it all at once. So you get a brand new install up there with LinuxCNC installed, ready for you to go. Mm-hmm. The setup is not hard for a basic machine. You still got to put in your stepper counts, all the things like that. Where it gets more complicated is when I add features. Like I have a button to turn on the router, or it's also if I run the code, the M3 code starts the router. I had a relay doing that. I have another button that turns on the power to the steppers, so I can idle it that way. Those you have to do. It's programming then, but again, that's my day job. I write code, so that didn't scare me at all. And I actually 6-7 years ago, I wrote one of my first YouTube videos I did a video on putting a touch plate on Linux CNC. And it's a horrible video. I mean, it's 7 years ago. It's old. It was shaky. YouTube, because it was shaky, they did some algorithm that took the shake out, but it cut off the edges. So you can't even see all the code all the time. But it's by far my most popular video. It's got like 30,000 views, or I might be exaggerating, but it's bumping up there. It's a big number.
And it might be worth revisiting and reshooting with a little bit better equipment now.
I probably should. And I don't know. Back in the day, I couldn't find how to do it. So I researched it. And I figured, well, if everyone else is like me, they can't figure out how to do it, I'll make a video on that. That's usually why I do videos. I want to do something and I can't find an example out there. So I save somebody else the time later.
We talked about it backstage, and this is not to go off topic here, but that's where I got going, was being in those shoestring router and Gatton CNC groups. And as people were building their machines, all of us were new at the time. I kept seeing the same questions over and over. And I thought, well, I'll just make a video and put it on YouTube, because it's easier to give somebody a link to a video that explains it than it is to try to type it all out in text over and over again, 3, 4, 5 times a day. So, and my first videos were so cringy, it's not even funny. I mean, I hesitate to take them down because they're still getting views, but I mean, I look at those and I just like, oh, let's never speak of this again, you know?
That's my top video, and it's horrible. It's not good, but the data in it is good, and people still want that data. I still get comments on it and thank yous, and even though they upgraded LinuxCNC multiple versions since then, it still works. The coding I used still works, and
well, that's something that I'm discovering too. Talking about revisiting that video, I'm discovering that a lot of my older videos were done on vCarve 8.0 and then 8.5. We're up to 11.0, so a lot of the stuff back there is just no longer relevant.
That's it. I started 8.5.
But I hesitate to take it down because there are still people out there using the older versions. So the data is still valid. But I've also got 300 videos, and I don't know that I want to go back and remake every single one of those things. So but that's neither here nor there. Now, I know you have a folder up there with some things you'd like to share. So if you'd like to put them up and talk about them. And again, I would
share first, shouldn't I?
Pardon?
I better share first, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
I open the video, but it doesn't really matter.
And again, if you'd like to see in detail the video on that puzzle drum shell build, there's a link to it down in the description of this video, and a link to Rob's channel as well.
I just threw together some things I thought people might think were interesting.
Okay.
Epoxy and epoxy?
That is something that I really want to get into and really want to explore. And that looks amazing.
I am really liking this epoxy and epoxy. And for the people who don't know what that means, you cut a pocket and fill it with epoxy. In this case, I filled it with black epoxy. Let it dry. Come back to it. Then I cut the white drumsticks. For that with a pearl tint. I use different kinds of epoxy. I don't have any brand I swear by, but I use mica powders. So that's why you get it's not a pure color. You get the different fluctuations and stuff. Whereas the black is just a black tint.
Right.
But so then I cut the drumsticks, let it dry. Next day, cut in the snake, pour in the epoxy, let it dry. Then you skim it all flat, and you end up with that. I'm really it's from the conference you did, the Vectric conference. Another presenter did that.
Yes.
Really hooked me. And
Shane Peters.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm proud of this, but his stuff he's some really nice stuff.
Something that Shane did not talk about during his presentation is that he draws all of those designs. He's a cartoonist.
Wow.
So he draws all of those portraits that he was cutting into those cutting boards. And that's something he didn't really talk about. But he's just not very good at the digital stuff. So he pays somebody else to do that for him. But that is something I really want to get into and really want to explore. And okay. And there's an example of what you were talking about with the void.
When I skimmed the inside, it got rid of a lot of that. There's still the depth and also how I had to search to find one of the cleanest ones with the least amount of glue on it. I mean, that's how that thing was just ugly with glue everywhere and dust. But yeah, so you fill in this. Can you see my mouse with the mouse?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there's still a pocket there, and I filled it. As a matter of fact, I thought I was going to be fancy, and I actually tinted the epoxy I had kind of a white and kind of a dark, and it came out so bad. I got the Dremel out and cut out that epoxy and did it a second time. So
okay.
again, a lot of learning in this drum. That just it's a one-off, or so far it's the first one. Maybe there'll be more, but yeah,
Now,
that first time, there's so many things you learn.
if you were going to do this again, what do you think would alleviate that? Would just, going with thicker material from the start, or?
Maybe, but I think that's part of the drum. I think I'm always going to have
Okay.
that.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, the secret, I mean, you really want to get the drum as small as possible, but still be 13 and 14-inch drum. I'll just say 14. It's always actually a little less than 14 because your drum head is 14 inches. So if you make a 14-inch drum, the drum head won't fit on it. So it's always a little less. But
Okay.
so you want to get the shell as small as possible when you cut it, and that's always a little scary too, because if it was a little bit oval instead of a perfect round, then suddenly it won't be big enough. So
Yeah.
you're always fighting those measurements. You want to be as tight as you can, but not too tight. But
Okay.
I might take off another 1/100th or 2 on each one. And usually when you glue it together, you glue the whole circle at once, and you clamp it up with belt, either a big hose clamp, or I use the belts,
like a ratchet strap.
yeah, exactly. And you can force it if you're just a fraction off somewhere, a little oval, you can put a big clamp on and pull it in so it's perfectly round. Whereas this drum, I didn't have that option because it took so long to do each joint. It was dry by the time I get 2 or 3 down, and I didn't have the option of manhandling it all. And it was, and again, because the grain goes around the drum, is also that much harder to flex too. It was really strong. Good thing. My picture's on order. I'm just hitting the arrow sign to go what pops up next. So
okay, that's fine. So, but basically what you're saying is it's going to go together the way it wants to go together, and you are basically at its mercy.
But if I do another one, I'm going to add a little bit more gap on those, and hopefully I can do them all at once and strap it and force it into how I want it.
Okay. Now Darren has another question here. Okay. Oops, wrong one. It bumped up. How do you hold the tolerances on those puzzle pieces?
I spent a lot of time in V-carve, just trial and error, and it is tight. I mean, it's so tight. I got my example here, but I don't want to switch back and forth to show the screen. But yeah, I did so many test fits and getting it just right, and because I did not want any gap. That was. To me, that's a kiss of death. Having a gap in there is just unprofessional. So I knew it was going to be tight. Just it was a little tighter than I expected. And I waited a while between when I cut it and clamped it. And I suspect a little moisture got involved. It absorbed a little bit in the wood. I don't know.
Well, that's worth mentioning too. That the fact that you are in Arizona, so you're in a dry desert climate.
Very dry.
And some folks don't realize how much that matters. Coming from 15 years of living in the Nevada desert, I can attest to just the moisture in the glue is enough to swell up the wood to where if your tolerances are too tight, you are not getting those pieces together. And, not without a hydraulic press anyway. So.
Well, that's it. And kind of the next thing on the puzzle drum, I'm trying to decide how I should finish it out. And I'm experimented with my own rims. If you look close there.
Oh, nice.
The puzzle joint going on the rim. So
nice.
Rims have to be they're sturdy. They're taking rim shots. These are getting beat to heck. So that needs to be hard maple or hickory or something like that. I would love to find, and of course it needs to be 6/4. It can't be 4/4. It's got to be a little thicker to work on that. I would love to find a dark wood that's still really sturdy. And I'm not sure if I'm sure there are, but there's nothing I can afford. I don't want to spend $200 to buy some ebony or whatever. But I'd like to have alternating colors and carry that theme. And then I don't have pictures, but I have some right next to me. I have some lugs that I showed you earlier that are the same purple theme. Here's some other pictures of stuff I've done on my regular CNC, not the Rotary.
Right.
I mentioned I don't go out and sell stuff, but a couple of years ago, I wanted to do a badge, and I asked the local police department, do you have some kind of file that you do these ways? And I'll make you a free badge. I'd actually made them a something before for the local police department. And since they knew me, they trusted me. They gave me the vector file, which was Adobe Illustrator. Mm-hmm. And since V-carve imports it, I was able to import that. Because there is so much detail in these things that
Oh yeah.
freeze. And this thing was, at one point I tried to draw it and I realized I don't have time to draw this whole thing out and get it right. There was so many vectors. But once I had the Illustrator file, it was great. And I made the file for them and I gave them that badge. 4 hours later, I had somebody asked me to build one for them. So it's great marketing, though it wasn't really the intent.
And that's why I tell people that all the time. This is truly, and if you build it, they will come hobby, because the minute folks see what you can do, they'll come up with 100 projects they need yesterday.
Yep.
So
and that scares me a little bit, because I'm afraid I'm going to get some weird requests for drums someday.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I can carve somebody's name or this in it, but I'm not sure
that you want to.
Yeah, I mean,
well, see, that's where I introduced the concept of the I don't want to do it pricing. If you don't want to do it, you make it so expensive they really have to want it. And it's like, if you're willing to pay that, yeah, I'll do it, but I really don't want to. Now, IL Peleg wants to know, how big are those badges?
24 inches tall, and then scale like 18 wide. Depends on how everything to get them right. Okay. But 24 inches tall is what I always do.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a friend who's a Border Patrol agent here. I mean, we got a lot of Border Patrol in Arizona, and made one for him. And they put on I guess they have a Facebook group just like everyone else does. And he put it on there, and suddenly this a couple of years ago, I was getting orders from all over America for Border Patrol badges.
Wow. Hey, that's a nice problem to have, depending upon how hard you want to work.
Yeah, it's cyclical. I haven't tried to push that. I'm sure if I had them posted again, I'd get more orders. But
yeah,
I don't want to be busy.
I'm with you.
That's it. This is a hobby, and I do not want to make it a business. If I can do something for fun and make a few bucks, great. But I will not make this my job. I don't want to. Once it's work, I won't do it anymore.
I'm with you. And for those of our friends who are into metric, that's about roughly 610 millimeters by about 460 millimeters, something like that.
Yeah.
So
here's again my logo. I've tried to do it multiple ways. There's on a 3D cut. I did it on the drum, and there's a different dragon drum. That's the same. The other one there, I play with textures and stuff.
That's awesome. And I love that relief. How you relief for the lug holes there. Yeah, I love those projections.
And that's just a dome from the V-carve.
Yeah, but it's a touch of class.
Yeah, but I make it taller than it is, so it puts a flat top on it. And
yeah. Oh, okay. So that flat top is just the surface of the material.
Right. Yeah. So if it could go further, it would go further. But of course, but I just made it like an inch tall, and it was, I don't know what it was. I had to look at the settings, but yeah, it was. That's just part of.
Guy Persone says he needs a drum sarcophagus to conform to his body. Rob's contact information is on his YouTube channel. You have plenty of time to plan, and
That was my first V-carve, or my first real 3D one. I'd done some tests before that, but this is the first real one.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, that one, and it's some beautiful quilted maple.
That is gorgeous. I'm a wood nerd here, and that maple just grabbed my attention. I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah. In fact, on my Facebook page for this, the Sino drums, I think that's the logo right there, the photo from it. Excuse me, got a tickle in my throat. And that's, like I said, I cut this on the Rotary. That's my customized wine bottle. That's for my daughter at her wedding. I made that when they got married. Got the vintage, the wedding date, and
that's cool. And that was done on that same Rotary.
Yep.
Okay.
I had to raise the carriage way up because it's, of course, the wine bottle was 3 inch, 3 1/4. I don't know what it was. Yeah, it's not very big. So, yeah, the actual play on the Z plate, or what do you call it? It's only like, I got about 3 or 3.5 inch play. So you have to raise it up to work around that. But
okay, so you raise the entire, for lack of a better term, the entire spindle, headstock and tailstock up.
Yeah.
To where you're within the 3 inch travel of the Z axis.
Yeah. Exactly. I call it a drawbridge sometimes, just because that's kind of the thought you get raising and lowering a bridge.
Yeah. That makes sense. I can see that. I can see that. So,
That's
okay.
the first photo. I think that's the first one, is it? Yeah. So, oops. Let's just come on. Okay, what's going on here?
I don't know. Is that the last photo or no?
Must have been. I thought. Well, I thought. No, there's some more.
Okay.
That's when I first cut. When I cut that timing pulley, that big one.
Right.
I think it's 144 teeth, so it's 12 to 1. I multiplied it out today. I forgot what the ratio is. It was 12 to 1. That's the
Okay.
belt just wrapping around it. Had to cut it twice. The first time it didn't quite fit.
Okay.
So I tweaked it like 1%.
And again, for those who weren't paying attention or who missed it, Rob's machine is made out of plywood. So as well, so is mine. Do you have any plans of maybe in the future going with aluminum extrusion or anything like that? Or this is one of those, it ain't broke, don't fix it?
Yeah, unless I have no plans to change it. Like I say, if I ever change it, it's going to have an open end on one side, and aluminum is not good enough then. It's going to have to be railroad tie going across there or something.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, I have no plans to change this. I mean, if something happens, maybe if I have to rebuild it for some other reason, but I wish there was an easier way to move the gantry to the drum on there, but I'm not sure if aluminum would do that. In fact, aluminum might be
worse.
Yeah, it might be worse.
Okay.
It's one of my very first drums. I kind of shown the different logos. I've done the logo or the epoxy, and the logo was 3D, and then this one is just one I cut and glued this on. I cut those separately.
Okay, so that's a separate piece that's applied to the side of the drum.
Right.
Okay.
And that's my first drums. And again, the idea behind this drum is I want to build everything out of wood that I can.
Okay.
I built the rims, I built the lugs and the shell, all out of wood.
Yeah.
And I learned that, yes, I can do it, but it's a lot more work than I really want to spend doing lugs and rims, especially this rim, because it was 3 or 4 layers deep. A lot of work to get those to match up right. And I suppose if I had a surface planer, it would help, because each layer I had to use the CNC to get it flattened, and a lot of man hours in making those rims where you can buy them for $60. So,
well, see, the more cynical side of me says this is the time you need an apprentice.
Yeah.
And that's the apprentice's job, is to make your rings.
That's all from that folder.
Okay.
Yeah. Here's the actual folder I had when I built the drum. But
yeah, again, I'm going to refer people to the video there. The purpose of this was not to take the place of the video that you made, because I know that was a lot of work. The purpose of this was to get this in front of folks who I knew. I mean, I can sit there and talk about Rob's drum all day long, and I can talk about his machine all day long, but it's better to get it straight from the horse's mouth and go check out his channel for sure. Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up soon, but we can go ahead and go with what you're going with now. This is the V-carve files.
This might be the next drum. We don't know.
Oh.
That's a joinery pattern I might do the next one. I don't know. I'm toying with that idea.
Okay. Now, you know what? I really don't know this. Are using splines in a shell where your joints are, is that kind of verboten, or is that done?
Some people do. Yeah.
A visible spline or butterfly or something like that.
No, I shouldn't. I've never seen that on a drum, on the actual wood joinery, but sometimes there'll be a ring on the inside.
Okay.
Up by the rims, they'll do a rim, a ring. I'm not sure. There's another word for it. I forget what it's called, but they'll do a ring inside there to reinforcement, a reinforcement ring.
Okay.
And that's very common.
Okay.
And especially if you go really thin wood, then you want add that strength up the rims.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Now let's go back to the video. I'll show you a few more things I got here. But
okay.
Let me verify that. Yeah. I've got the Dragon V-carve files, but they're not that exciting. Now let's go ahead and go back to video.
Oh, they're exciting to the folks in the chat, believe me.
Are they? Okay.
Oh, yeah. You might need to get you a website and start listing this stuff for sale. See?
Yeah. I'm toying with selling through Reverb if anybody's into musical instruments.
Okay. Okay. And is there a link to that on? Do you have a
I haven't done it
website
yet.
or
I
no? You
have
haven't done
not
it
set
yet.
up an account yet.
Okay.
But like I mentioned that there's the lugs. Here's well, I put them
And
0.3 inches tall, but yeah, things like that. You mentioned that before. Here's the
these are just standard techniques that are built into the software that you are applying to just turning to a rotary project.
exactly. Yeah, Rotary is not hard. I was pretty intimidated. I think it was version 9.5. They started doing a lot of Rotary stuff,
Right.
and so all you do is instead of a single sided, double sided, you do Rotary, and um, I mean it's not rocket science. I really thought it was going to be, and before that, it really was. But
Now, without making the world's worst pun, it is a lot to wrap your head around until you've done it once or twice. And then after that, it's much like anything else. It becomes, what was I worried about? So,
and I always, yeah, you can go back and forth between the Rotary and but for design work, I always like it this way so I can see. I'd have my mouse, so I can't do all the things I wanted to do, but just using my touchpad. But
okay. I see what you're saying. Now, Guy person, I'm not sure how you pronounce your name, Guy, pardon me. He wants to know, do you ever do inlays with metal?
I have not.
Okay. He says he's new to the hobby and he's seen some aluminum work with the wooden CNCs. Is walnut difficult to work with? Are you talking about inlaying with, say, aluminum in walnut? I've never done it myself.
But I have done epoxy that looks like metal, I get some metallic tints, and do the just epoxy, not epoxy and epoxy stuff, but just a basic shape and epoxy, and that looks really cool. It's a metallic look, but it's not real metal.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if you weren't talking about combining metal with walnut and just wanted to know about walnut as a material to cut, it's one of my favorites to work with. It machines beautifully. It cuts like butter if you're talking about just walnut in general. The only thing I would suggest is that you practice in scrap because walnut's pricey. And if you get a good result in your scrap, it's going to be an excellent result in walnut, and because walnut just cuts beautifully.
And the thing I'm toying with right now is, should I make the lugs?
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, and that's exact same woods. I have no finish, of course, so it doesn't look
right.
But that's exact same woods. Got the guts inside there. Let me put the drum down so I don't drop it. That would be bad.
Yeah. Okay, I'm scrolling back up to find some, because there were some questions that I saw, but I had to kind of let them go by. Let's see, getting back up here. Okay, Brooks Martin wants to know, are you using yellow glue or epoxy glues?
I use Titebond 2, and then that's what I use always. I buy Titebond 2 by the gallon. But then when I wanted to, for that drum, I wanted to grain fill. So I did use some epoxy. It's called finishing epoxy. It was in the video. I got the box over there somewhere, but it's called finishing epoxy, though I didn't use it to actually finish it, but to fill the grain and sand it back down and do it again and sand it down. So it's nice, smooth finish. But, and any little divots, or if there was a joint somewhere, that filled it in really nice. But I was told it makes it a little stronger. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I think it makes it a little stronger if it absorbs some epoxy into the wood. But.
Yeah. Okay. So you used the epoxy itself as the grain filler. You didn't use a separate grain filler and then finish over the top of it. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And I follow, we all follow different people online, and Highline Guitars, he uses that quite a bit, I think. And I like his finishing techniques. So.
Okay. Now, and what kind of finish was on that drum again?
General finishes, armor seal.
Okay.
I use that in the bags now because a can would, by the time you get to the bottom of the can, it'll always be thick and gooey. And now these bags, I've been using those just a little bit to keep the air out.
You're the first person. you're the first person I've talked to who has actually used the bag, so I have nothing really to compare it to.
Yeah.
Is there any special storage? I mean, keep it in the fridge or keep it,
No,
in the
no,
house or
it's
anything?
in the house. Yeah, I have
Okay.
a drawer of all my paints and stuff. I keep it with those. Just my
Okay.
little jars of paint that I'm always, you always finish painting a project, you got those
Mhm.
things.
Oh yeah, you end
Yeah.
up with too many paints.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. And then Guy wanted to know what's the best budget epoxy in your opinion?
I don't do enough to really. I found one on was Marine something, and
West
honestly,
Marine?
it wasn't West because that's the big one. It was a smaller
Okay.
company, but I've heard that there's only a few factories that make epoxy, and people just buy it by the
Yeah.
truckload and then refill it. I was going to switch to another one that it's a little thicker. I want something thick because if you're working on a round drum, if you
Yeah.
pour the epoxy, it's going to fall off the edge. And
Right.
so I want something a little thicker to work with. And so I was going to switch brands next time I buy some. And I bought a gallon of epoxy probably 2 years ago, and I'm still using that up. So it goes really slow.
Okay. So you don't have a favorite brand because
Yeah.
I'm kind of the same way. I'm limited in my experience with epoxy and I've tried one brand, so I have nothing to compare it to. So I don't know if it's good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah. And
So,
actually for that, the drum, the seal on that drum, the logo, I did use a fast curing one because again,
Yeah.
the drum shape, I wanted something to cure fast. So I have learned if I leave it on the machine and have the machine rotating while I do it, it won't find any, it won't roll off the edges because there's no high spot or low spot because it's always turning.
right.
But the bubbles never come to the top either. So
Yeah. So that's a trade-off. How do you deal with the bubbles? That's a good point.
There were only a few small ones, but I had to mix up a little more epoxy and get a toothpick and fill them
To
in.
fill. Okay. Okay. But no real issue with being able to see bubbles that are below the surface that didn't get cut.
Like everyone, I got the torch out and I hit it a few times
Okay.
every 15 minutes, but it got rid of the ones on the surface, but anything that was very deep, they wouldn't come up. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and we'll make this the last question. We've been going for almost an hour and 20 minutes.
cool.
And Guy wanted to know, do you use a Z probe? I'm guessing to set your Z axis,
I do on my regular machine, but not the rotary.
but not the rotary. Okay.
On my regular machine, I have, of course, the Z probe. I use magnetic switches for homing.
Mhm.
So it's a homing switch, not a
Not a mechanical limit switch like these.
yeah, not a limit switch. Yeah, I don't use those. It's just a magnetic one that goes by, but you program in the dimensions of the machine, so I won't run into the edge. I can't crash it. It'll stop before it gets to the end.
Yeah.
I try to run a program that's too big, it'll error before you even start it. It says it won't fit.
Okay.
So I like the homing switch that way. And it's pretty repeatable. I was nervous with the magnet. Kind of scared me. I didn't know how repeatable it would be, but because I was more worried about crashing the machines. That's the main reason I did it. But if it saves my settings from the previous session, so I can run it and then turn it off and come back and I'll rehome it again with the homing switches and run the program. It's close. I mean, less than 100th difference, maybe a few thousandths off. And I always leave a little tattletale spot where I can mark and come back to if I need to reset to a perfect zero. But it does a good job going back to the original settings.
Yeah, I use a 3-way touch probe or touch plate myself, so that I can set my XYZ, just nothing, no problems.
And again, I played for a while trying to figure out if I could do that with Linux to run a script to do that, and you've got to save the value so you get two values divided to get that middle between that circle when you're getting the X and Y. I don't know how to do that. Maybe somebody smart could do that for us. If I can find how to store that value and then divide it by 2, I can make it work then. But it's programming stuff. I didn't know how to do that in that language.
That's not just a Linux thing, because there are other 3-way touch plates for use with Windows that are kind of sort of the same. It will not save that value and then divide it in half. You have to try to get it close to the center and then tell the software the diameter of the bit so it knows how far, and then you have to spin the bit to get this and then spin to get that and all this other good stuff. So it's some crazy stuff. But the macro that I use on the screen set that I have for Mach 3, it does all of that.
Yeah. So. And one thing, actually, I was trying to figure out in Linux with the rotary, I wanted to have the up and down arrow turn the rotary, and it wouldn't do that. I have to use, I think it's I and U or I and O are the two buttons used for that.
Okay.
Actually, a while back, I bought actually a little joystick that I saw video on how I could make it work. And I could use a joystick on there to move things around, but I never.
Yeah, I used an Xbox 360 controller for several years, and then during the move it got broken. So now I'm on the hunt for another Xbox 360 controller, and those things have gone crazy in price because, of course, the Xbox 360 is an antique in the computer world.
Yeah.
So.
This wasn't even a game. It isn't from a game. It's just you buy a joystick and
yeah,
I guess USB interface, and it came with like 6 or 7 touch buttons. You can program those up, and there's a guy out there. He's called Ask Jerry, who's a Linux guy, or at least he used to be. He hasn't put videos for a while, but yeah, he had a video on how to tie those in, and I was going to do that, and I ran out of time and forgot about it. And you're busy making projects, you don't work upgrading your machine.
Yeah. Dave Matthews said he used your probe video to set his up. So
yeah, that's a video I did 7 years ago, and said people, and it was just start to finish. All I did is I did a new install. Here's how you had the button to do it, which people know how to add buttons. A lot of people didn't, and that was a big deal. Adding a button to do things and wire all the buttons together so it makes the process work. And yeah, that was my most successful video. And
if it works, it works.
But the video quality was horrible. But
if it works, it works. I mean, I know exactly what you mean. My most popular video is that dumb video that I did years back, right after I got the CNC built, where I used the CA glue and masking tape to hold down a piece of 1/4 inch thick material, and made some pickup surrounds for a friend of mine back east, and that thing went nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, we should go ahead and wrap this up. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find you and where you're located and everything?
Of course, I got Rob Shuster on Facebook. I don't talk woodworking there very much, but I've got 2 different Facebook pages. One's called Sidewinder Drums, and the other one's called Shuster Artistic Woodcraft, which is an acronym for SAW. That's why I picked those words. Both those Facebook pages. Got the YouTube channel. It's just called Rob Shuster, and if you put CNC behind it, you'll get the right Rob Shuster. It doesn't have a fancy name.
Okay.
I think that's all the places I am out on the social networking.
Okay. Well, I'll get the links from you for your Facebook pages, and I'll put them in the description of this video. There is already a link to Rob's channel down in the description of this video, and there's a link to the video he did on creating the puzzle piece drum. And it's an excellent video, even if you don't care a thing about drums, or you don't care a thing about rotary axis. It's worth watching because there was some interesting engineering that went into doing that. And of course, he also has
every time either.
And of course, he also has a couple of videos on making the machine that's able to, the rotary machine that cuts the outside and the inside of that drum shell. And I don't think people realize just how cool that machine is. That's awesome. And I'm surprised nobody has reached out to you about wanting to license that design. Because
there people mentioned it, but they weren't, but I'm an open source guy, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. And if it was a one-off. If I was going to do it again, I'd probably change a lot of things to make it easier, but I don't have time. I don't want to redesign anything. And we know who's the best designer for CNC machines. He's the person that wants to happen. He can do it. He can have the design. I'll give it to him.
Well, you
barbecue for this though.
Have your people call his people, and you can do lunch at Shane's Barbecue. Hashtag not sponsored. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming on and showing us what you've shown us and explaining what you've explained. Folks, I'm serious. You need to get over there and check out Rob's work, both on YouTube and on Facebook. He does some killer stuff. He doesn't post a lot, and he doesn't post very often, but when he does post, he's one of the few people that I will stop what I'm doing and go over and check it out because I know it's always going to be interesting. So, Rob, thank you very much.
Thank you. This is great. I had a lot of fun.
I need to get more guests on. So
Yeah.
I may be knocking on your door virtually through private messages again, if you're willing. And
It was great. If we make it work, this is, it's a lot better than watching football.
oh, okay. I'm sure there are some people who would argue with you there. And I don't know if you know this individual. A couple of proud in-laws watching today.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you. But folks, again, there will be no live stream next weekend, and I don't know about the weekend after that. If I don't see you before then, have a great Christmas. Say safe or safe if you know how to speak, and hug the ones you love. I mean, this is the season to remember folks, and we need to remember everybody. Hug the folks you love because you never know when it'll be the last time you get a chance to do so. And don't mean to end on a morbid point like that, but it's very near and dear to my heart. So love the ones you love. And I will see you in a couple of weeks. So y'all take care. Have a Merry Christmas, everybody.